The tricep pushdowns are a waste of time. The tricep pushdowns mainly work on your medial and lateral head of your tricep. But there's 3 heads of the tricep, hence the name tricep. And that's the long head. The long head is actually the biggest part of your tricep, and it has the biggest contributory role to the overall size of your arm. Really, if you want big arms, you should be working on the long head of your tricep just as much as you're working on your biceps. When you do a front or back double bicep, the sweep at the bottom is the long head of your tricep. And when you compare your arms without that sweep at the bottom and with that sweep at the bottom, there's a pretty big difference. When you do a hands clasped most muscular, the muscle that protrudes at the end, at the edge of your body is your triceps, the long head of your triceps particularly. And of course, when you do a side tricep, the beef on the back of your arm, that's your long head of your tricep. It's basically like a second bicep, and you should probably train it as if it were that second bicep. The horseshoe of the tricep, which is the lateral and medial head, is important of course, but so long as you can get lean enough, then usually that horseshoe isn't invisible. You can always see it pretty prominently. When I stopped working out for 2 years because I got into a car accident with my injuries, you could still see the horseshoe on my tricep. Training the lateral and medial heads of your tricep isn't somewhere that you're going to gain a lot of muscle in my experience. At least not something you're going to be gaining a lot from training directly, and I'll be going over that later on. At the very least, you're not going to be gaining very much from it compared to if you were to train the long head of your tricep and give that more priority. This is why in my own training and with a lot of my clients' training, I've basically had them do the majority of their tricep work over their head. I see very little, if any, reason to not have most of your tricep work done over your head. This is why I don't see a reason to not just completely spam overhead tricep extensions. I've been doing that with all of my clients. They've been getting a lot of results from that. Whether it be with dumbbells, with ropes, doing it single arm or doing it bilaterally, doesn't really matter. Just choose a variation that goes over your head, because then that would be working on the long head of your tricep a lot more than the tricep pushdown is working on the long head of your tricep. And now you're probably asking, well, why don't you just do both? The pushdown still works on the 2 heads of your tricep really well, right? So why don't just use that version for those heads and then do the overhead version for the long head? The answer is yes, you can do that, but here's the thing. The overhead tricep extension does this as well. In fact, there's actually a study that showed that the overhead tricep extension worked all 3 heads of the tricep better than the tricep pushdown worked them. You didn't just see more engagement with the long head, but you saw it with the lateral head and the medial head as well. This implies to me that really it's just an overall better exercise. This is also not to mention the fact that the lateral and medial heads of the tricep are also being heavily worked during pressing movements. The shoulder press, the overhead press, the bench press, the incline press, the dumbbell press, they all engage your triceps a lot. Dumbbell press a little bit less so, to be fair, and I'll have to explain that in another video. So even if the overhead tricep extension didn't exist in some fairy tale world that we can make up, doing tricep pushdowns would possibly still be redundant. Similar to how we think of the front delts. Nobody does direct front delt work, front delt raises or anything like that, because it's superfluous. You get that kind of work with all of your pressing movements already. Maybe I'm slightly exaggerating my point, to be fair, but you get the idea. And if you're enjoying this video, consider joining my coaching program. The applications are in the description below. If you've never tried the tricep extension, the overhead tricep extension, you really should. Make sure the cable's around waist height, kneel into it, kind of semi-squat into it, and then stand up. This should make your triceps fully stretched at the top. It'll feel a bit weird getting into the position, but once you're actually in that position, it'll feel great. Dumbbells are also good to use, but I find that, yanking this dumbbell over my head like that and putting it up is even more awkward than using the machine, so I prefer using the machine. The katana press is also a really good exercise. It's arguably the best exercise if you think about it, because it works in accordance with the way your tricep muscle fibers actually run. They actually splay a bit outwards or diagonal as opposed to being directly vertical, which is what is necessary when you do the overhead tricep extensions with the rope or with the dumbbell. But this exercise is easily the weirdest to get into, so I don't like it for that reason. Also, I feel like kind of a douchebag taking up 2 machines, so I'm inclined not to do it. Maybe you're not like that, but that's just who I am. A substitute you can use is using 2 ropes instead of 1 rope. This will allow you to, instead of pushing directly upward, you can push a bit diagonal like that. I don't mind taking up 2 ropes, especially if the gym is relatively empty, so this is perfectly fine for me. But yeah, these are the exercises that you should be doing, not the tricep pushdown. There is one niche scenario I can think of wherein the tricep pushdown would actually be a great option, the ideal option for you in fact. And I think in fairness, it's worth going over that. The niche scenario I can think of is if you don't naturally develop that horseshoe, or your horseshoe is like significantly small, it's notably small. Even when you lean down and you're doing the side tricep and you're posing correctly, it's still just a relatively small muscle that you have in that horseshoe. Then doing the tricep pushdown is actually a really good idea. This would actually be recommended over the overhead version because by doing the tricep pushdown here, you're ensuring that the lateral and medial heads of your tricep are being fatigued before the long head of your tricep. That the limiting factor in you doing more reps of the exercise is that your medial and lateral triceps are fatigued. So yeah, other than that specific reason that I can see some people having, I see no reason not to just spam overhead tricep extensions. If you want, I think you can include some skull crushers for more, just give yourself more variety. If you're someone who feels the need to spice things up every once in a while and you can't just do the same movement pattern all the time, I think the skull crushers are a good alternative, at least if your elbows don't cramp up when you use it. But yeah, after this video, I hope I never see anyone else ever do a tricep pushdown. I'm gonna go to the gym after this right now, I'm probably gonna see it, but I alone have debunked this exercise. No one will ever do this again. This will be a relic of the past. Hopefully, maybe, probably not. It most certainly won't. But yeah, anyways, thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Goodbye.